Welcome, Buff fans. It's game preview time. As Adam and I are going to talk about a trip down to Fort Worth for the Buffs at Texas Christian. And Adam, last time we were there, boy, that was one of the most memorable games I think you and I would say have probably ever covered with CU, right?
Yeah, that was one of those games where I think we were saying it was like being in a movie. Because, like, especially coming off 22,
Yeah,
to have that game kick off the Coach Prime era, to be in that stadium and hear some rude stuff from the fans. So it's not exclusive to Buffs fans. There are rude people in every stadium I think I've covered a game in.
right.
Uh, and to see them come out there Dylan Edwards, of course, is not celebrated by Buffs fans these days, but that was just an unbelievable performance by him and such a fun atmosphere after the game. And then you get to the press conference, and it was like, again, back to being in a movie. And you got Coach Prime calling out Edwarder, and it was crazy. I do remember part of that day, though, having to walk a mile across TCU's campus in a walking
Yeah.
boot, and didn't enjoy that so much. And it was really hot. And yeah, but by and large, that was one of those games that when we look back to covering the Colorado Buffaloes, I mean, just from an experience standpoint, might be in the top 10.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And 10 might be too low because of everything that went into that one and just the buildup of that very first game of the Coach Prime era. And I don't remember what the line was in that one. Do you?
21,
It was 21.
21
Okay.
points.
All right.
Yep.
So, I knew they were big underdogs. And obviously, the way they come out and, I mean, just an entertaining football game, 45-42.
Yeah.
And, there were so many aspects of that game. And, Travis's interception and Dylan Edwards, the game you mentioned. I mean, Shedeur Sanders throwing for, I think, 500 yards. Was it? No, was
More
it
than
five?
500 yards, 510, something like
Yeah.
that.
So,
Yeah.
so
It was crazy.
it was
Yeah.
crazy. Trevor Woods had a fantastic interception in the end zone. Um, Oh my gosh, who was the safety that got hurt? Like in the play later, but he kind of had a game-saving play in the last minute. I can't remember who it was.
Miles Slusher.
Yeah, Miles
And
Slusher.
then Cam Stillman Craig takes over
Yep.
there.
Yes.
Yeah. So Cam Stillman Craig didn't even start that
He
game,
he
which is kind
barely
of crazy thinking back.
he barely played that game.
Yeah.
Miles Slusher makes a really key play, but gets hurt, and then Cam Summer-Craig takes over for the next 2 years. So yeah, I mean. Alejandro Mata was not the starting kicker. I actually ran into him yesterday. He was looking forward to going down there, and I said, "That's right, you didn't kick down there." And he goes, "No." He goes, "Jace Feely was the starting kicker at that point." And so, so many different storylines in that one. Breaking out the gold numbered uniforms, and yeah, so many things.
Beautiful. They got to break those out this week, right?
Yeah,
You got to go back to that.
I would think so. I mean, he had luck with them last time, so this one obviously not the fanfare. Um, both teams are totally different, but I think it's in a different way. It's as big for this Buffs team as it was for that one in 2023.
Yeah, I think, well, I mean, there's a whole debate there, right? That game at TCU kind of really set the standard for what was to come. And
Yeah,
obviously, we know with hindsight being 2020 that they went 4-8, had offensive line issues, yada yada yada.
yeah,
uh, but th that did kind of make a statement.
right.
Um, if you win at TCU this Saturday, it's as it's maybe more important for the football program, but nationally, from a perception standpoint, I don't know if it makes as big a statement.
Right. No,
Does that
I'd
make
agree.
sense?
Yeah, and I'd agree with that. I guess, for different reasons, like I would say, I mean, nationally, that was such a huge thing because if they get blown out in that opener, then a lot of people would be like, "Yeah, see, we told you." Um, I just think this one is big for this season. This one's really huge for this season. You mentioned that would kind of set the tone in 2023. I think this one sort of sets the tone for the second half. This is the last game of the first half of the
Mhm.
season. I think it'll kind of set the tone for the second half.
Yeah, I mean, with TCU, you're 13 and a half, 14-point underdogs next week. unless you upset TCU in some crazy impressive fashion, you're going to be a decent underdog going up against Iowa State. Brian, I just feel like you got to find some way just to get one more point on that scoreboard one of these next 2 weeks, go into the
Yeah,
bye week 3-4 and kind of regroup because the injury report came out last night and it's a banged up football team right now. And
yeah.
these next 2 games are going to be tough. It seems like we're saying that every week, but it's true. Outside of Delaware and Wyoming, this early slate has been really tough, and there's even some tough games on. I mean, there's a lot of tough games on the second half of the schedule. Arizona's better than I thought they were going to be. So
Yeah.
it's it's not a gauntlet, but it's bordering on a gauntlet of a schedule at this point.
Well, and we, before the season started, we looked at this 4 game stretch in October. No, 4 game stretch starting with BYU. BYU through Utah coming up. And it was kind of like, man, you got to start off really strong in those first four to set yourself up for those next four. And 2-2 through the first four, 2-3 now through the first five. They didn't have the setup that they really needed. And you really kind of needed to be 3-2, 4-1 if possible, going into this stretch to make everybody feel confident you're going to even get to a bowl game. Right now, I'm not sure there's a ton of confidence from Buff Nation that this team is going to be in a bowl, and they're going to have to steal a game here in the next 3 weeks. You mentioned two, but I don't anticipate them stealing one in Salt Lake City. That's going to be tough, but they're going to have to steal one of these next three, and I don't know if this is the one. I don't know if Iowa State's the one, but doesn't it feel like they have to steal one here?
Yeah, and yeah, you just don't want to see the locker room separate too, right? And that's another part of why it's important to
Hmm.
not have things go off the rails. It's like we think back to, gosh, 2018 when they kind of just spiraled out of control after losing to Oregon State. In
Yep.
23, kind of spiraled out of control after losing to Stanford after giving up that big lead. That's what you're trying to avoid at this point. I feel like there's so much talent in this program that if things come together, they get some guys healthy, this could be a team that can get to a bowl game. But yeah, you kind of have to readjust your expectations when you start a 0-2 in conference play. You can't be talking at this point about conference championship being
Yeah.
in the locker room. Absolutely, those players, coaches,
Yeah.
100%. You can still do it because this conference is going to cannibalize itself going forward. But from a fan perspective, yeah, you got to kind of maybe readjust your expectations a little bit. Not punt forward to
Yeah.
2026. It's too early for that.
Yep.
But yeah, it's not been great. And that Houston game is the one that, if the season doesn't go well, it won't be mentioned in the same vein as Oregon State and Stanford because they didn't give up a big lead. They just really never really were in that contest. But that's the game right now that you look early season where they really dropped the ball and weren't prepared to be able to kind of seize, momentum coming off that Delaware game.
Yeah. And in different ways, you can look at Georgia Tech and BYU and say the same thing. I really feel like they threw one away last week against BYU. And even with the Houston loss, if you're able to find a way to win that BYU game, I think that it masks that a little bit, and you feel a bit better, well, probably a lot better about this football team if they're 3-2 coming off a top 25 win. That line's probably not 13.5 this week, and I think the confidence is higher. But you're right about worrying about spiraling with this team, and um, we're still hearing going into week 6 that we need some leadership. We need better leaders to step up, and Coach Prime talking about underachieving, and those aren't things you want to hear at the midpoint of the season. And that's where if there's not a lot of leadership, if they go down to Fort Worth and just get destroyed, this season could really fall off fast.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that they're going to put up a battle. This seems like under Coach Prime that he really can pull these guys out of the gutter sometimes.
Yeah.
Didn't happen in 23, but there have been bounce back moments since that Stanford game, and maybe that was kind of kind of the learning curve for this staff of terms of how you kind of bring a team together and motivate them after a tough loss. But yeah, this could be a good matchup for the Buffs, which is kind of crazy because Josh Hoover is the most talented passer they've seen this season. We talked about it on Tuesday of if the defensive backfield, which it seems like half of it is on the injury list right now,
Right, right.
uh, if they can live up to expectations, this actually might be a decent matchup for them.
Yeah, because TCU is not the greatest running team. Josh Hoover has not been a running quarterback. Um, I was looking the other day. He's got in his 3 years as TCU starter, he's got a total of minus 22 rushing yards. His career high is 27 yards in a game. Um, so he's not been that big threat. I did tell Matt Smith when we were doing a video this week that I would take the over on Josh Hoover's rushing yards. I'd take the over 27 because I would think that TCU is going to look at what CU's given up this year and say, you know what, let's throw a couple quarterback runs in there, But he's not a Haynes King or even a Bear Bachmeier. I think he's probably more manageable from that standpoint. Um, but you still got to prevent him from throwing the ball, right? And those DBs really have to step up.
Yeah, well, their top running back is listed as questionable. Their top receiver, McAllister, a really talented player, is listed as questionable.
Yeah,
So those are a couple guys. I know everybody's focused on Colorado when those injury reports come out here during the week, but keep an eye on those two because if one or both of them can't go, you're taking a couple really big weapons that Hoover utilizes offensively off the table, and that could put a lot of pressure on them to try to maybe do stuff they're not used to doing.
yeah,
You said if you're TCU, you run Hoover more, but you also don't want to get him hurt for the rest of the season too. So
yeah.
um, I don't think you're
I wouldn't run him like a dozen times. I would just throw in a couple of if it's a 3rd and 8 or whatever, maybe a design QB run to get 12 yards, that type of
okay.
deal.
Yeah, but the biggest issue has been Colorado has given up almost 200 rushing yards per game, and
Yeah,
they got their banged up back and a non-dual threat quarterback. That's one area. If you're going to
yeah.
have some optimism, you feel good about Colorado's defense, at least being able to kind of key in on some stuff. And I don't know, does that change it? They're so press man oriented. Um, what do you do this week? Do you stick with that?
Yeah, I think so. It was actually funny. Did you watch the coaches show with Romy?
I did not. No.
Okay, so she asked him, do you play more zone? And he basically was like, no.
Okay.
He basically said that's not what we do. That I'm not going to have the guys do something they're not good at. And I got the sense with that answer that Deion Sanders feels about the same about zone as Tad Boyle does when it comes to zone defensive
Well,
basketball.
eventually Tad did give in and play some of it. And I know
He
CU
did,
does at times, but not
yeah,
very regularly.
yeah. But it felt like the same vein. Like, let's not do that, please. So I think they'll probably stick with what they do, but they just got to get better. That group is really being publicly challenged this week, and um, yeah, I think the frustrating part for Coach Prime and as fans and as I'm looking at stats is that and just watching the games is it's guys like DJ McKinney and Preston Hodge that aren't playing like we thought they would, and
Yeah.
that second cornerback spot we knew it was competition. We didn't know who was going to be there. Um, I don't think it's a surprise that that's been a revolving door, that second spot, because it felt like RJ Johnson, Tion Parks, Makari Vickers were kind of similar. Maybe nobody's stepping forward, and that's been the case. But it's the other two that haven't stepped up either. And so uh, we're here 5 weeks in, and just as a group, they haven't played as well. And it's not just giving up some of the passes, but it's the penalties. And I mean, they've already got as many pass interference penalties through 5 games. They had all of last year in 13 games. So that's a problem.
Yeah. And Carter Stottmeyer played pretty poorly early this season. He's coming off his best effort. He's
Yeah.
listed as probable, so
hmm
hopefully he can get out there and kind of build off that last
They're
week.
starting to
But
solidify safety. I mean, I think
50,
they
yeah,
found something with Tyreek Byard in that
definitely.
Houston game. He was fantastic in the Houston game and has played well since then. And then Carter's starting to play better. I think that combination has really started to solidify the last 2 weeks. So that helps.
It does, yeah. But when you talk about your top five defensive back spots, because you're playing a lot of nickel, obviously,
Hmm.
only one has lived up to our preseason expectations through 5 games, and that's not good.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. That's not a good percentage.
Yeah. I
And
don't have nothing else to add there. I mean, it is
that's
what it
just what
is,
it is.
Brian.
Yeah.
Like,
Hmm.
yeah, it really is.
It is. And linebacker, Coach Prime flat out said it this week. He goes, we need the linebackers in the secondary to play better. And linebacker's been a little bit of a revolving door. Um, we'll see Reginald Hughes or Martavius French flash and make some plays. But then the next week, one of them is on the bench, and you got Jeremiah Brown or Sean Myers in there. And um, Jeremiah Brown did not have, he started and played almost the whole game against Houston and didn't play that well. And the next week against Wyoming, he didn't get off the bench other than special teams. And then last week he's back out there. And so they haven't figured out linebacker either, and that's a problem.
Hughes is the guy though that when he flash, French does too. Both those guys. I mean,
Yeah.
there are moments where like you really see it, but yeah, that's. I think we're going back 3 weeks now. That's why I asked Coach Prime if guys were freelancing out there because it
Yeah.
just felt like it was a lot of guys trying to play hero ball out there, which is not conducive to a successful defense on any level.
Yeah. And it's interesting how they've used the linebackers because French is the one that he's pretty routinely been in the lineup. I mean, he'll play even if he doesn't play the whole game. He's going to play probably half of it. But Reginald Hughes is one that I think he had 13 tackles week one, but then week two he barely plays. And he'll have a. I thought he had a decent game against Wyoming, but then I don't think he played a whole lot against BYU. So he's the one that seems to be the one that's getting benched more than the others, and so I don't know I don't know what they do at linebacker, but like Coach Prime said, those spots have to step up. I think they're fairly happy with their defensive line, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, injuries though. I mean,
Right.
you got a lot of defensive tackles on that list. Jaheim Otis is the one guy that's played a lot, and he was on the injury list a couple weeks ago. That's
Yeah.
not on there now. So you got some banged up bodies there. We talked about the depth of that group, and they've needed it early
Hmm.
on this season. But that it does seem like that group is getting better. Like both lines, it seems like the consistency is finding itself a little bit more and more, and it's
Yeah.
helped with the edge group as well, kind of aiding a little bit of that. Like I felt like Arden Walker's really come on the last 2 weeks after maybe just got a quiet start to the season.
Yep.
And you're starting. Keaton Wade was not a four down linebacker before, so this is a new outside linebacker type situation for him, and he's getting better in that role. So yeah, I would say you mentioned the linebackers and secondary are getting challenged. That's the issue. We talked about it on Tuesday about it's quarterback and receivers that are the issue offensively. It's pretty clear. You don't want guys in the locker room finger pointing, but it's pretty clear the groups that are not living up to their potential right now.
Yeah, there's no question, um, and it's clear because Coach Prime has said it.
Yeah, right.
It's not us just saying it. I mean, it's just go listen to Coach Prime. He literally said linebackers and secondary need to step up. And as far as that defensive line, the injuries are definitely an issue. And throughout this year, it's like, well, they're hanging on it when they get guys like Gabriel Lightfoot back and things like that, they'll be better. Well, Lightfoot we just saw, had surgery. I don't know how bad it is or if he's out for the rest of the year. But he's not coming back anytime soon. Um, Anquin Barnes, he's on the injury report. Tavian Coleman's on the injury report. Brandon Davis Swain missed a game a couple weeks ago and he's back. But they definitely need a guy like Amari McNeil has to step up and play well. And I thought he has the last couple weeks. Um, Sam Okunlola hasn't played in several weeks now. He's listed as out for this week. But you've had guys like London Merritt and Alex McPherson step up as well. And London Merritt has looked pretty solid the last 2 weeks. Alex McPherson has made some plays. So at least they have some depth in that front. We knew they did. We just didn't know that they were going to need it so much in the first half of the season.
Yeah. With Tavion Coleman, unless you're unless he's able to come back and play in just a couple of games. You want to redshirt him at this point because he'd still have 2 years of eligibility left, and he was a guy that was running first team a lot this preseason before he got hurt. So yeah, just try to get him healthy for the rest of the season. But yeah, when you see Anquan Barnes pop up on the injury report again, it's like, nah,
Yeah.
they got there's some guys out right now that are. Uh, kind of on the fringe of playing or not this Saturday that you need in there. And if some of those probables on that injury report turn into out, that could be a problem too. There's a lot of talented players on that
Yeah.
list.
I just thought of this, but I wonder if you remember last year when they had some injury issues on the defensive line and they put Tyler Brown over there.
Yep.
I wonder if that's something we see there. Tyler Brown's not playing. Well, actually, he's out too. So never mind.
Yeah,
He's
it's
listed it out.
so I don't mean to laugh. It's
So
yeah, it's a lot of guys on that list, man. Like it, but I
mhm.
do think Colorado might be a little bit more honest about the probables than a lot of these schools.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think it kind of makes it look a little skewed.
That's
Uh,
that's the thing with this injury list is there's gamesmanship involved with it too, and there's different approaches. I remember, I think it was Mike Shanahan when he was the Broncos coach, would they got in trouble for not reporting certain injuries. Then he just started throwing everybody on there. And so, he
uh,
would put, so and so's probable with a hand. Well, he was fine. He was going to play. So I don't know what the Buffs are doing with that. I do know there's been, I went back and looked at them, through the first conference games. There's been 3 or 4 cases where guys initially in that initial report were listed as doubtful and wound up playing. So, so we'll see. Things could certainly change. People have to remember that that report was the Wednesday report. That's how they are at that point, and that could change. And we've seen it change
yeah.
a little bit,
Hmm.
throughout a game week. I don't know if I think there's 15, 20 guys on listed out. I'm not sure we're going to see any of those guys. And um, frankly, all those guys were out last week. There's only 2 guys that are on that list that were not on it last week. So, and
Was
it's
Savell Smalls on it last week?
he was not.
Okay, he's the only one that's out that was not on it last week.
The other one was Carson Westbrook, a walk-on receiver.
Oh
And
yeah.
so
Okay.
the
Do
and
you want to spend 5 minutes on that?
but I mean, Savell Smalls has not been playing either. So
Right, right.
um,
Special teams, but yeah,
and to be honest with you, I'm not trying to diminish the list of the guys that are out, but there are a lot of guys listed as out that probably wouldn't be playing anyway. It's just a few big key names that you look at and say, man, you wish you had Simeon Price and DeKalen Taylor and Sam Okunlola, and there's a few guys in there. That entire list, again, just from a competitive standpoint, I'm not saying anything about the people, but that entire list, a lot of it you can look at and say they're probably not going to miss him anyway because he wasn't going to play.
yeah. The name you mentioned there that jumped out the most, and I love what Price has done early this season. He's my favorite running back in
Yeah,
this roster to run right now. But imagine DeKeelan Taylor and Draylon Miller back there and all the different stuff you could do with both those guys.
yeah,
That should be fun going forward whenever they get Taylor back in the mix.
yeah. That'd be I hadn't thought about that. That'd be a fun pairing in that backfield, and they've
Yeah.
been doing a lot of the 2 back sets. That'd be fun to see those 2 of them. And I agree with you. Simeon Price has been my favorite back, although Draylon Miller might be changing my mind on that. He might be my favorite running back going forward. He looked really good the other day.
Yeah, he's going to be as big a key in this game as anybody on Colorado's roster outside of
Yeah,
quarterback, which we
hmm
assume is going to be Caden Salter again.
yeah,
But yeah, no, he's definitely. We talked all off season about this role for him
yeah,
and how well he would do in it, and it definitely turned out that way last week.
yeah. The other one was Cam Michael, which we thought we
Yep.
might see in that role, but we haven't yet. Um, I'm still waiting to see that kid get let loose somewhere. He hasn't played
Yeah.
yet, but I'd like to see him somewhere. Um, yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see what they do. Does Draylon does he play more at running back? I mean, they're gonna give him traditional carries, or is it gonna be more wildcat stuff? I'm curious to see how they use him going forward.
Yeah, I would just keep mixing it up, man, because
Yeah,
that's what makes him great is that it's really hard to defend because he can do so many different things. And when
yeah,
he's in a traditional slot receiver role, it just doesn't show itself the same way. And
yeah,
you throw him in there and you can throw a touchdown pass to him, but it's kind of built off other stuff that he's already. It's kind of like almost like when you do play action. It's like with Draylon, you just don't know where he's going to
Yeah.
be, and that element of kind of throwing the defense off can provide an extra second or two to give him that head of steam. That once Draylon Miller gets that head of steam going,
Yeah.
he's not an easy guy to bring down. It's not quite to Laviska Shenault level in terms of short yardage, but it's below. It's right below that.
Yeah, and it looked really good last week, and that's the one thing as and I don't know if we want to get into game predictions yet, but that's one thing as I look ahead to this. We'll just focus on this week, but with the Buffs being almost two touchdown underdogs, like there's a shot there if they can do some of the things they did last week, and we've now seen Pat Shurmur can mix it up and throw in some fun wrinkles. He went away from it too fast, but do the Buffs do some things on Saturday that TCU's never seen before and surprise them and come out and have a great game plan and and surprise people with some of the things they do. I think there's that element that I look at and say they've got a shot if they can do some things like that.
Yeah. And then keep doing it.
Right, right.
Don't stop after two drives.
All right, we're up 14-0. Cool. Let's go back to what we usually do. Like, no, keep doing it,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yes.
but
Yes.
but I honestly do think like we've now seen he can do it. I would love to see more of that stuff, and even like we haven't talked about it a ton, but like when they came out with the bunch formation, and shifting that out, and they only did that the first drive. It's like do more of that stuff. That stuff's kind of cool. I'd like to just see more of it. And I think it's going to take some of those things for them to win this football game, don't you?
Yeah. It comes down to defending the pass and sticking with what works offensively. Like I
Yeah,
know TCU is a very talented football team, and even if you play your best game of the season, it's not going to be an easy victory there. But
right.
TCU, they're one of those programs. Like you can even go back to their national championship run back in 22 and kind of look at, man, they could have had like five losses that season, but they
Yeah,
were so clutch. It kind of is the Big 12 of like there's not a lot separating a lot of these teams. And so Colorado, again, talent wise, matches up with pretty much every team in the conference. You could maybe say Texas Tech because of the NIL money they put at those guys. It is on a different level right now. I think that would be a fair argument. But they just need to play disciplined football, well coached
right.
football. And this should be a great game again down in
Yeah.
Fort Worth.
Yeah, I was on a podcast with a TCU writer this week, and I said, look, Colorado should be able to go down to TCU and give them a game, if not win it. They should be able to do that. But from what we've seen out of them, I don't know if they will. And they've just been too up and down, the lack of consistency, um, all the things that Coach Prime has talked about, right? It's just been there, the lack of leadership, all those things. It makes it hard to be confident picking this team. And so should we get into game predictions?
Let's do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll start this week. I think you usually start, but
Go for it. Yeah.
yeah, it because of those things, it's hard for me to pick the Buffs in this one. I haven't seen enough in against good teams to think they're going to win, especially on the road. I mean, they've had one road test this week, and this season, and they failed it miserably, going down to Houston. And TCU to me is a better football team than Houston. So the Buffs have got to show up better. Obviously, than they did against Houston. They got to show up better than they did last week against BYU. I was sharing a stat with you before we started. Going back to last year, the Buffs are 1-5 in their last six games against Power Four opponents. The one win was against an Oklahoma State team that had totally given up at that point at the end of the 2024 season. So, and in three of those games, they really kind of got blown out. I mean, the Kansas game last year, the Alamo Bowl against BYU, and then the game against Houston. So, in three of those games, they really just didn't show up very well, and they didn't live up to expectations in those games. They've got to step up. I think we've said this two or three times, but this is sort of another gut check game for this team that do they want this or not? And they keep talking about accountability and lack of leadership. This is a gut check game for this team, but I think TCU is better than them, and I think the Buffs come out of this with a loss. I'm going to go TCU 34, Colorado 20.
Okay. I'm going to go something similar. I don't know if I said their national championship game run. They didn't win a
Yeah,
national championship back in 22. I want
right.
to clarify that. But Now this
They
is
and they were in the game, but they were not even close to a national championship that year.
oh no, they
What
were
was it?
in the
Was it
game.
was it like
They
63?
showed up to the stadium that
Yes.
night.
We think they did. Wasn't it like 63-7, something like that?
Something crazy. I turned it off at halftime, man. That was tough.
It was bad.
In terms of prediction for this week, yeah, like I said, I'm going to go something pretty similar. This is a football game Colorado can win.
Yep.
Uh, I like a lot of the parts of this matchup, but TCU has only lost one football game this year, and that's a game that their fan base feels like they should have won down in Tempe last
Hmm.
weekend. So, a borderline undefeated team. They would have been ranked going into this game had they held on down there in the desert. So Colorado's 2-3. And the last time we left Colorado to cover this team on the road, Brian, it was not pretty down there in Houston. So I'm going to go 30-21, thinking that Colorado is going to be able to compete in this football game, but TCU is going to come out. It's one of those things where um, can I see Colorado coming out of that stadium with an impressive victory? Absolutely. Can I pick them to do that? Absolutely not
Yeah, yeah,
at this point until I see it.
yeah. And actually, going back to what I had said before, the last three times we've left to go on the road to cover this team, it has not been pretty. So
Yeah.
they had that nice run on the road last year that we hadn't seen from a Buffs team in a very long time, and they were beating teams pretty handily on the road. And then they hit Kansas, and so yeah, the last three times we've gone on the road to watch this team play, it has not gone well. Um, yeah, it's an interesting matchup. I get what you're saying with the passing offense too, but the way these corners are playing, I if you're Josh Hoover and TCU, you're like, all right, let's go. You're probably feeling pretty good about what you can do against CU, and like, hey, if nothing else, we'll throw it up deep and get a pass interference penalty when their DBs don't turn around and looking for the ball. So
Yeah.
you know, it's a tough one for the Buffs. So
Yeah,
we're both
obviously, all that analysis is based on Colorado playing much better in the secondary than
yeah.
they did the first
Obviously,
five
yeah,
games.
they're
Yeah,
capable. That's what's
yeah,
frustrating, I think, for Coach Prime, for the fan base. I think um, as media, I don't know if we feel the same frustration, but um, I think both of us would probably say, in some ways, it's hard watching this team because we know they're better than this, and they should be better than this. This should be a 3-2 or 4-1 football team, in my opinion.
yeah. And that's why I keep saying you don't punt on this season. I know
Yeah,
there's people clamoring for Juju, and I think if it keeps going south, then absolutely there is
yeah,
going to be a clear point when you kind of build for the future. But because of the talent in this roster, it just even at 2-3, it's still too early for all that.
yeah. I think if October is as ugly as it potentially could be, November has got to be Juju Lewis's time. But we're not there yet.
Not
I,
there yet.
I do think I'm with you. I think there's plenty of potential for them to go down there, win a game this week, and I don't know about turn the season around, but in some ways it feels like it would be turning the season around because if you're 3-3 after this week, you feel a lot better about yourself and those bowl game chances, and you'll feel a lot better going against Iowa State next week, and so it's a big one for them.
Yeah, yeah. So you're gonna hit the stockyards up, get some barbecue when you get
Yeah,
down
I
to Fort
keep
Worth
I keep
tomorrow.
hearing for a couple of years now since we've been going down there. I've heard about the stockyards in Fort Worth and that it's a really fun experience to go down there. And one of the women's basketball players, Jade Masagayo, is from there, and I was talking to her last week, and she said you have to go there. Like it's just a good experience. And there's a cattle drive down there. You can see the big Texas Longhorns and not the football team, but the actual animal and just cool atmosphere from what I hear and good food. So I'm gonna hit that. You gonna get some barbecue this week?
Maybe I'm staying right by the airport. I fly in a
Yeah,
little bit later, and so I'm gonna just check in and see what I can get delivered to my hotel room. It's gonna be really hot and humid down there, and I did a lot of Dallas. I did the whole JFK Memorial the last time Buffs were down there,
yeah,
and I have my wife who's a photographer as well on that trip with me, and so we got a chance to venture out quite a bit. This time I'm going out solo. It's really hot down there.
yeah,
I've got a buddy whose wife is going through it in the hospital right now, so just it's one of those weeks where I just want to get down there, check into my hotel,
yeah.
and get some. hopefully something that's not a chain. I guess is the one thing I'm going to be looking for to get delivered to
Yeah.
my hotel. But I'll see you there at the stadium on Saturday, and it probably won't be in a suit because I'm still having flashbacks to the UCF game last year.
Yeah, it's supposed to be almost 90 on game day, right? Last I checked.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
and that's like 105 here. Like
Right, right,
if we're going to throw the humidity factor in there,
right.
just in terms of what we're used to.
We joke about it, but I wish the Big 12 would switch some of these games. And why can't we go to Dallas in November and Morgantown in early October? You know, oh, why do we have to go to Morgantown in November or Manhattan, Kansas in late November? Let's move Dallas to those later times.
Let's do it. Let's just boycott any game that doesn't fit with our weather preferences.
Sounds good. Adam, I'll see you down in Fort Worth this week.
Okay, sounds good, Brian. Thank you.